Hello everyone. Food cost or cost of goods sold is really complicated topic. And it's complicated because there are many moving parts inside. But I've found the simple way to talk about it, to share with you like complicated things in simple terms, why it's important to control food costs and how can it improve your restaurant business. I'm Maxim Dispark, the founder of the Deglaze Profit program, and this video is a small part of our Deglaze Profit program. And I decided to share that with you to show you how the program is looked from inside. So if you want to know more how our program can help you to improve your business, you can go to the link below of this video in the description of this video, and there you will find all the information. Hello everyone, Maxim Dispark is with you. And we are starting a new module which is focused on inventory, cost of goods sold, basically in food which you operate in your restaurant. Till this moment, we've covered several very important but in most of cases high level things to let you see your restaurant from like helicopter view. One of those was cash flow machine or restaurant money game, which helps you to control your money, to understand where like what is the current situation within the month, allows you to forecast sales and plan expenses according to those sales, and it helps to reduce some expenses with some generic flow. Second part was about the where financial problems comes from. So basically it was about your mindset, about uh, restaurant flexibility and operational health. So basically, what traits do you need to be successful? Third part was about establishing new processes or improving current processes to make your restaurant clock like restaurant. But now it's time to focus on one of most important expenses groups or expenses categories within your restaurant, and this is COGS. To remind you what this is about, if you don't remember, so this is our cash flow machine, which I hope you use right now. We have here sales forecast and we have budget. And when we're budgeting our expenses, we have here four groups: cost of goods sold, labor expenses, operating expenses, and then non-controllable expenses. So cost of goods, basically this is your food which you buy, labor expenses, everything that you spend to keep your employees working, operating expenses, different types just to keep your business going, and non-controllable like rent or rent related taxes. So those are four groups, but in most of cases, restaurant business combines operating expenses and non-controllable expenses as one group. And in our projected P&L or in P&L in general, we see those groups: cost of goods sold, labor cost, and other costs, where we have operating and non-controllable. And in general, like approximate numbers will be that each of those groups will take 1/3 of your expenses. So cost of goods sold would be around 30%, I hope less. Labor costs would be around that, and other costs, which includes operating and uncontrollable, around 30%. So those are, in most of cases, pretty equal, those groups of expenses in terms of amount. But the thing is that one of those group of expenses, cost of goods sold, has huge amount of opportunities to cut those expenses. Other costs really hard to cut. Labor costs not so easy, but cost of goods sold is completely different story. So it's time for a big shift. You played a bit by reducing expenses, right? Having a cash flow machine, having questions to ask for every single expense you have. You already identified some narrow problems with the list of all the problems, like financial problems that it gave you. And I hope you already identified some of those in your restaurant and you tried to fix them with SOPs without any guidelines. Doesn't matter. You tried to fix them on your own. And you were trying to establishing, and I hope you already established a daily workflow to be ready for new improvements. So you have all the theory and all those tools to make your restaurant as a system. Now it's time to see how you can fix multiple problems with a single solution or single system. So this module is about taking control of the most volatile part of your business. And while I'm saying volatile, I mean that other costs is often pretty much the same. Labor costs could be a bit higher, could be a bit lower, but still it stays within some range. But cost of goods sold can vary a lot. So where do you lose most of the money when you're running your restaurant? Let's review the list of problems you would be able to address with this new solution. But to do that, we need to review what our business is about. So basically, the question is, what is the core of your business? So the core of your business is that you please your customers with tasty food, good service, and get paid for that, right? Without having tasty food and decent service, you wouldn't get paid or your restaurant wouldn't survive. Making food is the core of your business, right? It's obvious. And your business is built around food cycle. What means food cycle? You buy food, you do something with that, you sell it, and you have some leftovers. And again, you buy new ingredients and so on. There are many steps in the process of making food, and the more steps there are, the more places to lose money. Again, if you have a single step in that process, you have less chances to lose money on that single step in comparison to the situation when you have a lot of different steps, because every single step has its own opportunities to waste your money or resources in general. So here are those places where you can lose your money. I've tried to draw this image to show you, like, to let you feel that. So first of all, let's see the high level image. So what do we have here? First of all, you order food, right? You receive delivery. Then you store that food. Then you prepare that food the day you want to sell it. Then some of that food which was prepared, you try to store for the next day or next several days, and you reuse that in the next day. Then, regardless if you reused prepped food from previous day or just prepped this day, you are cooking this. You serve those dishes and you cleaning tables. So this is the cycle, or this is the list of steps where you potentially can lose money. So this is that food cycle which I was talking about. Now let's look in details. Like, what are opportunities, like negative opportunities to lose money? First step, unpopular ingredients or too much ingredients. So anytime you talk with your vendor tries to sell you something. And oftentimes, vendor tries to sell you not what you need, but what vendor tries to sell. It's not the same. And often vendors try to sell something which is not unpopular, or when expiration date is close. And as a result, you have, when agree on that offer with the vendor, you have some unpopular ingredients like, let's try this one. Oh, you never tried that. Let's try this one. Take this one pack or something. You buy it, you try it, and you don't like it, or your customers don't like it. For instance, if it's a beer, like you tried new one and your customers don't like it, or you don't like it if it's some kind of sauce, so you don't use it, or you have a deal from your vendor, like let's buy 3 pack of this and I'll give you some discount, and you have too much ingredients, and as a result, part of that food you will throw away because you don't need it actually. Another thing is that you will lose that food because you wouldn't be able to use that in proper time within expiration period. Then when you receive delivery, there are chances of losing money. For instance, when you get broken packages, or already spoiled food, or missing items, like you got 5 less items than you ordered, or you got 3 pounds less of meat than you ordered, and you didn't check that, and you never know, you would never know about that. So those are chances to lose money. Then you have spoiling, wastage, pests, etc. This is also a high chances of losing money there. Bad storage conditions, stays for too long, and so on. Like refrigerator doesn't work properly, or doors is not closing properly, and so on. Then prepping food. When your cooks have too much trims from meat, vegetables, and so on, and you have small yield. Yield is that, if you don't know what is this, is that part of the whole food that you will actually use. Like for instance, if you take meat with some bones and you don't use bones, you cut off the bones, and it would be minus 30% to the weight of that meat that you will use, and 30% if you don't make any stock, um, you will just throw away that part of meat, and you are losing those money, right? So while prepping food, there are high chances of losing some money. Then, when your cooks over prepping, they're making too much, marinating meat or something, and store it for the next day or next 2 days or 3 days, and especially if you have improper storage conditions, you will also lose food there. Cooking, for instance, if you overcooking things, right, or you ignore the order details, like I want to make this like this or like that, and when your server gives that to the customer will just reject that because it was it was made not according to their ask, and you also lose money there. Then when your servers get orders wrong, or when you cook for too long and you have voids, when your customer tells no, I will not pay for that, and you lose money there. And also there are chances of over portioning. If you put too much food into that dish, doesn't matter if customers paid for that or not, when you get the plate with a lot of leftovers, that means that your customer paid only for the part they eaten, and everything else could have been used for other plate, but you over portioning if it's a frequent situation. So there are also chances of losing money there. And also, I've put percentage of wastage, like average, that you can lose on each of those steps. And those are pretty realistic numbers. Of course, in some cases you have like zero. For instance, if you are checking every single delivery like precisely, you have zero waste there. But you might have 20% on prepping food, minus 20%, and so on. So those are numbers pretty accurate. So how big those losses might be? Those are just some percentages. Now, how big those losses could be? Um, According to stats, from 22 to 33 billion pounds per year, restaurants uh, of 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 the food restaurants are wasting in US. So this is the amount of food that restaurants wasting every single year. This is actual number. So if you don't believe that you're wasting some food, look, this is what stats saying. There are no other expenses categories in restaurant that has such an opportunity to waste your money. And you can see it on the scheme above, right? So when you look on that scheme, you see all those places where you can lose your money. So when we try to calculate how much food will be wasted, like considering those percentages, imagine you have 100% of food or 100 pounds, so it doesn't matter what, 100 something at the beginning of the cycle, like you ordered 100 of something. Then you have food order minus 5%, received delivery minus 5%, and so on. But we understand that when we lose 5% from 100, we will have 95 left, right? But received delivery minus 5%, that would be from this number, not from 100%, but from this number. That's why we would have here not 90, but 90.3. And the same here, minus 10% from 90.3, 81.2, and so on. And as a result of applying all those losses, you get the number 60.8. So this is the number of or amount of food that brings you real value. Everything else is wastage in a different shape and form. And those are realistic numbers. So imagine you buy 100 of something and you actually use and get paid for only for 60.8 or 61. Of course, you might have different number. This is the generic picture. But this is a good picture to explain the level of the problem. Just to remind you, grasping COGS is vital. Grasping cost of goods sold is vital. Till you don't control this, you have that amount, you can have that amount of losses, and 60 out of 100 of food that actually brings you money. Now, how it affects your P&L? It is that this 100 of something is still too abstract. Let's try to apply this to some numbers from P&L. So imagine this is your P&L now. What do you have? Cost of goods sold, 33%. This is your like planned or actual, doesn't matter. This is just an example. So pretty average percentage, 33% of cost of goods sold. Other costs total 30%, and labor cost normalized 33%, right? So we have those three groups: for cost of goods sold 33%, labor cost 33%, and other costs 30%. Now, how that problem with losing food affects your P&L. So this is the average P&L with 4% of profit margin, only 4% of profit margin. That's why is said smile here. So it says that 4% is not good. And what affects that profit margin that stays on that low level? So we have profit margin 4%, cost of goods sold 33% of revenue. So sales or revenue 42,000, and only 4% of that would be profit margin, 33% of that would be cost of goods sold. What would happen? Imagine the situation. You avoid all those losses, and you set up an ideal process when you control every single step, and you reduced those losses or expenses to zero. Yeah, losses to zero or wastage. What would happen if you avoid all food losses? So, just a reminder, only 61% of food that you buy brings you value, or 60.8 or 61 to simplify things, right? Only 61%. 39 is wastage, is losses. That means that only 61% of COGS is effectively utilized. So 61% of those 33, which are part of sales, only 61% of those 33 brings real value. That means that only 20% of those 33, like only 20 out of 33, only 20 out of those 33 brings you real value. And that means that 20.87, or sorry, 12.87 of revenue, or 33 minus this part, are food losses. So portion of those 33%, or almost, or even more than one third, or 12.87 out of 33 are food losses. Can you imagine that? That if you look on those 33, okay, I have cost of goods sold 33. But if you realize that only 20 of those bring you real value, but 12.87 is wastage, this is what you don't get as profit because you lose it. I'm just making a pause here, just to let you realize. That's why grasping COGS is vital, and focusing on reducing that cost of goods sold has a lot of potential for your profit margin to be increased. Sadly, it's impossible to keep food losses at zero level. Like, you can't avoid losses on all those steps. You can't avoid. Even most successful restaurants still have some losses. But those are much smaller than an average. But it's real to keep them under 20%. So instead of 39%, like you lost 39% and you are left with 61. So instead of 39%, I hope I didn't confuse you. Again, if you will keep your losses of all the food under 20%, that means that your effective food, food that brings you money, will be above 80%. So 20% losses, 80% of food that you actually sell and make money out of it. Because we can't drop that to zero, those losses, but we can have them below 20%. And even keeping your losses, food losses, below 20%, not 39, but only 20%, your P&L will look like this. Cost of goods sold, instead of 33%, will be 26%. Do you like this? Instead of 33, you will have 26. And your profit margin, instead of 4%, will be 11%. Or instead of 1600 or 1700, you will have 4700 of profit margin every single month. Do you like that prospect? The better you control food on every stage is, the more you save in that cycle. All that you saved becomes your profit. So, in every of those steps, if you're able to save at least some of those losses, not to lose them, like stop buying all those things that vendor tried to sell you, keeping delivery under control, keeping better storage condition and less food on your storage to reduce spoiling wastage, keeping eye on your cooks, how much trim do they leave, and so on. So the better you control your food on every stage, the more you save in that cycle, in that food cycle. Everything else becomes your profit. Like everything that you saved becomes your profit. That's why it's so important to focus on cost of goods sold. Okay, illusion of cost of goods control. So till this moment, you might have the illusion that you're already controlling your cost of goods. And during this course, you already got some tools to control cost of goods. What do you have? Knowing and approving a list of expenses in your restaurant, right? You at least started to checking your expenses and thinking, should I really buy this or not? Cash flow machine with budget and target P&L. So at this stage, you understand I need to stay under this level of expenses for COGS, and what should I do to reduce that? You have some sales forecast that allows you to normalize food ordering process, not to over order to like a lot. And cash flow ongoing tracking that allows to adjust food ordering. Right? So this is what you have right now with the course. I hope you already have some other approaches. Maybe you have inventory periodical. Maybe you have some other approaches. I don't know, but still, those things don't give you control over your COGS. It's not enough. How you can identify inventory problems early? Any types of inventory, like spoilage, um, when items are missing, and so on. How can you order precisely? Not to over order or not to get to the situation where you don't have enough food. How you can deal with fresh ingredients only? Like how can you make the environment in your restaurant, make the situation when you don't have too much of spoilage? And how can you make sure you don't lose money on each of those steps? So those are questions that current approaches don't answer on. We need a better solution for cost of goods sold control. There are many places where you can improve that food cycle, and you already see the big picture, but you need a metrics and approach to measure how effective your changes are. You need some metrics, right, that will show you if it's good or not, and some approach to measure. Your goal is to know exactly what percentage of food brings you revenue and what amount of food is wasted. Like, how do you know that percentage? 61%. How do you know what part of your food brings your real, like actual income? Once you're able to control it, you are able to reduce that wastage controllably. So if you know what you had in the beginning, you know what you had at the end, and you have something in the middle, it's much easier for you to reduce that wastage while controlling the situation. You need something more detailed than high level budgeting, and this something is related to the inventory approach. So, inventory. The efficient inventory approach, not just some kind of inventory once per 3 months. Like, oh, it's so hard, I can't do that often, or so on. But effective, efficient inventory approach. And you're going to get such an approach in this module. So, all my goal during this lesson was to make sure you realize how important is to control your cost of goods sold. Because this course is about increasing your profit margin. And instead of this situation with 4% of profit margin, I want you to have this situation when you have 11% or even more of profit margin. But you can see where are those possibilities of increasing profit margin. And those possibilities are within controlling cost of goods sold, and then as a surgeon fixing those problems one by one with having proper control in place. Okay, next lesson will give you even more interesting information. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.